Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Ever notice how when you get sick, it's like your thinking changes?
It's true.
Like even a simple cold can really you feel mentally fuzzy.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to be exploring a research proposal.
Okay.
That's diving into this very connection, how your physical health can actually impact your brain.
That's right. We're looking at this proposal by Dr. Lev Neimotin.
Yeah.
And it really challenges us to rethink how we approach health, especially when it comes to the brain.
So the central question here, is it really possible that just getting sick can trigger changes in your brain, changes that might even linger after you've physically recovered?
That's the big idea.
Wow.
You see, a lot of medical research tends to focus on the brain in isolation, almost as if it exists separately from the rest of the body.
Right.
But Dr. Neimotin is proposing that to truly understand the brain, we need to consider the impact of the body's overall health.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense, but how does this body-brain connection actually work? What's the mechanism?
Well, one key area the proposal highlights is systemic inflammation.
Okay.
You know how when you're fighting off an infection, your body mounts an immune response?
Right.
That inflammation, it doesn't just stay in your body.
Oh, wow.
It can actually trigger immune responses in the brain as well.
So it's like your brain gets caught up in this battle.
Exactly. It's as if your brain is saying, hey, something's wrong here. We need to conserve energy and focus on getting better. And this can lead to what's known as sickness behavior.
Sickness behavior. Okay, what does that mean?
Basically, it's a collection of symptoms. Things like fatigue, difficulty concentrating, even feelings of depression or anxiety.
Oh, really?
It's your body's way of encouraging you to rest and recover.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how something happening, in your body can manifest so clearly in your mental state.
Absolutely.
But I've always assumed those mental effects were temporary.
Yeah.
Just part of being under the weather.
And they often are. But what Dr. Neimotin wants to investigate is whether these brain changes can sometimes outlast the initial sickness, potentially contributing to longer-term mental health challenges.
Okay, so that's a pretty big what if.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that a bout of the flu or even a bad case of food poisoning could have a lasting impact on my brain and mental well-being.
It's certainly a possibility that he wants to explore.
Wow.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Haven't you ever felt mentally drained or just off, even after you've physically recovered from an illness?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Right.
It really does.
It does.
But how do you even begin to study something like this? How do you measure these changes in the brain that are linked to specific physical illnesses?
Well, that's where some pretty high-tech tools come into play.
Okay.
The proposal outlines using brain imaging techniques like fMRI, which allows us to actually see which parts of the brain are active at any given time.
Okay.
They'll also be using EEG, which measures the electrical activity in the brain, and PET scans, which can track specific processes like inflammation.
So the idea is to use these brain imaging techniques to look for unique patterns of activity.
Yes.
Almost like fingerprints.
Right.
That might be associated with different physical illnesses.
Yeah, that's right. The proposal calls them neurophysiological signatures.
Oh.
It's like each illness might leave a distinct mark on the brain.
Wow.
And by identifying these signatures, we could gain a much deeper understanding of the body-brain connection.
That is incredible. Just imagine, doctors being able to use brain scans, not just to diagnose mental health conditions, but also to potentially uncover underlying physical health issues that might be contributing to those conditions.
Sure.
It could completely change how we approach healthcare.
It's an exciting prospect for sure. But of course, there are challenges. One of the biggest is being able to differentiate between correlation and causation.
Yeah.
Just because we see a particular brain pattern in someone with a specific illness doesn't necessarily mean the illness caused that pattern.
Right.
There could be other factors at play.
That's a good point. It's like, the classic example.
Right.
Ice cream sales and shark attacks both go up in the summer.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean one causes the other.
Right.
There's likely a third factor involved, like warm weather.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how do you untangle those relationships when it comes to the brain and the body?
Well, that's where careful research design comes in.
Okay.
They'll need to develop very specific studies to try and isolate the effects of physical illness on the brain, controlling for as many other variables as possible.
It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is.
But the potential benefits are enormous.
Absolutely.
I'm really eager to hear more about the potential real-world applications of this research.
Yeah.
What kind of impact could this have on how we diagnose and treat both physical and mental health conditions?
That's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, okay.
Stay tuned.
All right.
Yeah. So we've established that, physical illness might be leaving its mark on the brain even after we've recovered.
Right.
But what does this mean for how we approach healthcare in the future?
That's the question that really has me hooked.
Yeah.
I mean, if Dr. Neymoten's hypothesis proves correct, what kind of impact could this research have on how we diagnose and treat both physical and mental health conditions?
Well, one area where this research could have a major impact is in diagnostics.
Okay.
Imagine a world where a doctor could order a brain scan.
Yeah.
Not just to look for neurological issues, but to also gain insights into a patient's overall physical health.
It's like using a brain scan as a window into what's happening throughout the body.
Exactly.
That's kind of wild. But how would that actually work?
Yeah.
What would they be looking for?
Remember those neurophysiological signatures we talked about earlier? Well, the idea is that by analyzing brain activity, doctors could potentially detect the subtle traces left behind by different physical ailments, even if those ailments are no longer actively present.
So even if you're not currently experiencing any physical symptoms, a brain scan could potentially reveal that you had, say, a severe infection a few months ago.
Yeah.
And that infection might still be impacting your brain function.
Exactly. And that knowledge could be incredibly valuable for doctors, especially when trying to understand the root causes of a patient's mental health challenges.
I see what you mean. Let's say someone is experiencing symptoms of depression.
Right.
Currently, doctors might focus primarily on treating those symptoms with therapy or medication.
Yeah.
But if a brain scan could reveal that the depression is actually linked to, say, an undiagnosed autoimmune disorder,
then the treatment approach could be completely different. Instead of just addressing the symptoms, doctors could target the underlying physical cause, potentially leading to a more effective and long-lasting solution.
This is starting to feel like a major shift in how we approach healthcare.
Right.
It's moving away from treating the mind and body as separate entities.
Right.
And embracing a much more holistic view of health.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this shift could also have a significant impact on the development of new treatments.
Oh, yeah.
If we can pinpoint exactly how specific physical illnesses affect the brain, we can start to design more targeted interventions.
So instead of using a one-size-fits-all approach, we could have treatments tailored to the individual based on their unique, brain signature.
Exactly. For example, if research reveals that a particular type of infection leads to increased inflammation in a specific area of the brain, then scientists could work on developing drugs that specifically target that inflammation, potentially preventing long-term cognitive or emotional consequences.
It's amazing to think how much more precise and effective healthcare could become.
It's true.
If we had this level of understanding about the body-brain connection.
It really is.
But I'm also thinking about the practical side of things.
Sure.
Wouldn't this type of approach be incredibly expensive and time-consuming?
Well,
I mean, are we talking about brain scans for everyone who walks into a doctor's office?
Those are valid concerns.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that this research is still in its early stages.
Okay.
We're a long way from routine brain scans for everyone.
Right.
But even if this approach isn't feasible for widespread use, it could still be incredibly valuable for specific patient populations.
Like, for example, people who have already been diagnosed with a chronic mental health condition.
Exactly. If someone has been struggling with depression or anxiety for a long time, and traditional treatments haven't been fully effective, then a brain scan could potentially provide valuable insights into whether there's an underlying physical issue that needs to be addressed. It could be a game changer for those individuals.
This is definitely making me rethink how I view my own health.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that, we can't just focus on treating the symptoms.
Right.
We need to understand the root causes.
Absolutely.
And that often means looking beyond the mind and considering the intricate connection between our physical and mental well-being.
Well said. And this brings us to another exciting area where this research could have a major impact: prevention.
Oh, how so?
Well, if we can identify those neurophysiological signatures that are associated with an increased risk of developing certain mental health conditions, then we could potentially intervene early and prevent those conditions from developing in the first place.
So instead of waiting for symptoms to appear, we could be proactive and take steps to protect our brain health based on our individual risk factors.
That's the idea.
That's incredible.
Imagine a world where a simple blood test, or maybe even a saliva sample, could reveal that you're at an elevated risk of developing depression later in life. Due to a specific genetic predisposition or a past infection.
And armed with that knowledge, you could make lifestyle changes, seek early intervention, or even explore preventative medications that could help to mitigate that risk.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? To shift from a reactive approach to healthcare to a proactive one. And this research has the potential to make that vision a reality.
This has been an eye-opening conversation so far. I'm really starting to grasp the vast implications of this research.
It's huge.
Not just for individuals, but for the entire healthcare system.
It's truly paradigm shifting.
Wow.
But let's not forget, this is just a proposal. There's still a lot of research to be done before these ideas can be translated into clinical practice.
That's right. So what are the next steps? What needs to happen to bring this research to fruition and realize its full potential?
We've been talking about Dr. Moten's proposal and this whole idea of studying the link between physical illness and changes in brain activity. And it's clear, like, this research has the potential to really just change healthcare as we know it.
It really does.
But as with all scientific endeavors, there's a journey ahead. So what are the next steps to actually, making this vision a reality?
Well, you're right. It's a long road from a proposal to actual widespread impact. One of the first hurdles Dr. Moten highlights is the need for large-scale, long-term studies. We need to follow a lot of people over time to really understand the long-term effects of physical illness on the brain.
That makes sense. It's one thing to see a snapshot of brain activity. But it's another to track how those patterns change over months or even years after someone's been sick.
Exactly. And these studies need to be meticulously designed. Remember, we talked about the challenge of separating correlation from causation. It's crucial to control for other factors that could influence brain activity. We need to be absolutely sure that the changes we observe are directly linked to the physical illness and not something else entirely.
It sounds like a massive undertaking. Imagine it also requires collaboration between different fields, neurology, immunology, psychology.
Absolutely. This kind of research demands a multidisciplinary approach. It's about bringing together experts from various fields to share their knowledge and work together to solve this complex puzzle.
That's really the beauty of science, isn't it?
It is.
It's about collaboration and just pushing the boundaries of what we know. All this research takes time, and I'm sure many of our listeners are wondering, what can I do in the meantime?
Well, even though the research is still ongoing, there are certainly things you can do right now to take care of both your physical and mental health. It all comes back to that holistic view we were talking about.
So it's not about waiting for some, magical brain scan to tell us everything. It's about recognizing that our bodies and minds are interconnected.
Absolutely.
And that taking care of one means taking care of the other.
Exactly. Simple things like eating a healthy diet, getting regular exercise, managing stress, and getting enough sleep. These all have a profound impact on both your physical and mental well-being.
It's a reminder that we have a lot more agency over our health.
We do.
Than we sometimes realize.
Yes.
We don't have to wait for all the answers from science to start taking, proactive steps.
That's a great point. And on that note, here's something else to consider. Pay attention to your body and your mind. If you notice changes in your mental clarity, mood, or energy levels, especially after being sick, don't just brush them aside. Talk to your doctor.
This whole conversation has been incredibly eye-opening for me. It's made me realize that I often take my brain for granted. I focus on, keeping my body healthy, but I don't always think about what my brain needs to thrive.
It's a common oversight. But remember, your brain is an organ, just like any other. It needs nourishment, it needs rest, and it needs protection.
And just like we go to the doctor for, regular checkups for our heart or our lungs, maybe one day we'll have routine brain checkups to make sure everything is functioning optimally.
That's a fascinating thought. As this research progresses, who knows what the future holds?
Right.
But in the meantime, we can all do our part by prioritizing our overall health.
Yeah.
And being mindful of the incredible connection between our bodies and our brains.
Well said. This has been a deep dive that's really made me think.
Good.
It's a call to action to be more proactive about our health and to embrace that interconnectedness between our physical and mental well-being.
I agree. So the next time you're feeling a little off, remember what we've discussed today.
It's good advice.
It might be more than just a passing mood. It could be your body trying to tell you something.
Right.
Listen to it. Take care of yourself and stay curious.